And we'll take our time, this inshallah will be a long-term series, so we'll take our time doing some introductions to the topic and kind of building our way up to, getting into the actual, what is the body of evidences that we use in order to, understand the things that we're supposed to do in terms of worship. And it can get complicated because we know we have multiple schools of Islamic law, which is not really that complicated, but inshallah ta'ala we'll maintain a smooth flow through this series so that we really understand the topic, and then we start getting into what are the things we're supposed to do, what are the evidences that we use for them, and how do we understand them, and so on and so forth. The first thing that inshallah ta'ala I just want to talk about is the name itself of the subject, right? So we call it fiqh. It's also called sharia. Sharia is more direct in terms of meaning that this is a system of law, right? A system of law. But traditionally, this area of knowledge is called fiqh. And fiqh does not mean law, right? Fiqh means comprehension or understanding, having a grasp about a concept. And the Prophet ﷺ, in one of his hadith, he said, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fid din." That whoever Allah intends good for, Allah gives that person fiqh of the deen, understanding of the deen. And so this is where we derive, the word fiqh from when we study Islamic law. Because now it's about the details of worship and life and all these kinds of things, and so it requires a lot of knowledge. And it's a whole, you go into the Islamic universities nowadays, so there's a whole department. There you have a college of Sharia, and in it they study law, and they even specify, are they going to be studying Islamic finance, or they're going to be studying criminal law, or they're going to be doing fatwa, or so on and so forth. So now it's gotten to the point where it's even more specified with all of this. But what's beautiful about what we call it, right? One of the words that we used to call it, we don't call it law. We call it understanding. We call it fiqh, because that's what it actually, when you have a true understanding of Allah's law, what that looks like is how do you put it into action? What does it look like? What am I supposed to do? It's not just theory. It's not just, a whole bunch of, words that you're throwing around. It's not philosophy where you're just thinking about, if you studied philosophy or if you have been exposed to philosophy, it's a whole bunch of talking about how to talk and what to talk about. There's a whole bunch of stuff that comes, not much action, right, but a lot of thought. But fiqh is really about getting into action. You take the body of what you have in terms of evidences and putting them into action. And the fiqh is developed primarily by the messengers of Allah, right? The Rusul, the word Rasul. Now there's two words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses when describing the people that He sent. One of them is Nabi, the other is Rasul. And the difference between a Nabi and a Rasul, there's a traditional understanding that's maybe less, less nuanced. If you're interested, Sheikh Yasir Qadi has a whole very detailed hour-long lecture on YouTube. It's called, you can just type in Yasir Qadi, the difference between the Rasul and Nabi. He goes into a lot of detail, all the opinions, and explains it. But in a nutshell, the main difference between a Rasul and a Nabi is that a Rasul is someone that was opposed. They were rejected by their people. They were not accepted by their people. So you think of all the people that came as a Rasul, they all faced rejection. A Nabi was someone that came, but they weren't rejected by their people. So they came, they were preaching what has been preached before. The people accept them as a Nabi. They might give them a hard time, but they're not being rejected. No one's questioning that they have been sent by Allah. But a Rasul, they're questioned. The people say, no, you are not sent by Allah. We will not obey you. We will not do as you tell us to do. And this is a Rasul. And the Rasul, alayhi salatu wasalam, are the ones that are also in one description of the difference between Rasul and Nabi, are the ones that are given instruction. They're giving now a specific revelation instruction as to how to live your life and so on and so forth. And when it comes to the number of Rusul, the number of Rusul that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, what is the number of Anbiya? What was the number of Anbiya? Too many. MashaAllah. It's a great cop out. 124,000. Right? There's one narration. The people differ. The scholars of Hadith differ on whether or not it's authentic, but they do authenticate it. 124,000 Nabi, right? Nabi prophets. And out of them, in the same Hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions that out of them, 315 were Rusul. Were Rasul. They were qualified as people that were rejected by their people. And there is a reason you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, at least what we can think of, 315 over the course of time, legislators to not only a Nabi and a Rasul both come with the same message. Tell people, La ilaha illallah, you only worship Allah. But then after that, you see that a Rasul also establishes a firm hold on the people, right? Meaning they're being challenged, and they first have to overcome that challenge. They have to establish that only Allah should be worshipped, and after that, there's some, there's usually there's some peace, not in every case, but usually there's now some peace and calm, and now they have to teach people how do you deal with all the different things in your life, from A to Z, from marriage to divorce, from how you eat, how you slaughter, all these types of things, right? But it comes after a period of challenge. But one of the things the ulama they talk about is why we have so many messengers. Why not just one in the beginning, and then they said everything, and then it's codified and so on and so forth. But some of the reasons for that is that number one, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spread human beings throughout the earth. They're not just in one place. You have actually the first, from Adam alayhi salam until Nuh alayhi salam. This is a period that's called, there was no real need for there was no Rasul in this period. They were Anbiya. Allah said a couple of Anbiya, but there was no Rasul. Meaning the people were still on the original message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They hadn't deviated from worshipping Allah alone. And this is, a period of 1,000 to multiple thousands of years after Adam alayhi salam comes down to earth. But after, at the time of Nuh alayhi salam, do we know the story? They deviate, all this kind of stuff. And then Nuh alayhi salam comes, and then you have the prophets and messengers that come after that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن مِّن أُمَّةٍ إِلَّا خَلَا فِيهَا نَذِيرٌ. Every single ummah, every single group of people, there has always been a warner that has sent to them. And He said subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيْنَ لَهُمْ. That we have sent a messenger to the people in their own native language, so that they can explain to them in their language all the rules that Allah Azza wa Jalla wants them to explain. And so this is one of the reasons why you have multiple rusul, that there are multiple languages, people that are spread all over the world. The other one is because the disobedience of people leads them to now abandoning the law of Allah. So you see in the case of Fir'aun and other cases as well, where there's a, from the individual, the one in power, there is a disassociation from Allah. They don't want to accept Allah. And because of that, what happens is the way they rule over the people, they abandon the law of Allah as to how they rule the people. So they're not consulting Allah or a prophet or a Nabi or a Rasul as to how they should deal with the people. I mean, they're not doing that whatsoever. They're basing that on their own desires. And when things get really bad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send not just one Rasul. Sometimes He will send multiple Rasul, or two Rasul or three to the same people. What's an example of two Rasul, two messengers to one people? I think I just said it. Right? Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam, two Fir'aun. I gave it away, right? But there are two Rasul. There are two messengers that were sent to one people. There's an example in the Quran of three. What is that? Three. Three messengers to one people. They're not mentioned by name. In Surah Yasin, وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا أَصْحَابَ الْقَرْيَةِ إِذْ جَاءَهَا الْمُرْسَلُونَ. When three or more, right? Mursalun is plural, came to the same qaryah. إِذْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهِمُ اثْنَيْنِ. We sent to them two. فَكَذَّبُوهُمَا. So they denied them. فَعَزَّزْنَا بِثَالِثٍ. Then we empowered them with a third. Three Rasul to one village, one people, right? And then it's interesting, you think about this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Musa alayhi salam asked, he said, my task is so heavy, send Harun alayhi salam with me. Ashrikhu fi amri. Make him my partner in this command that you have said. Make him a Rasul alongside with me. So two Rasul for Fir'aun, three Rasul for this village in Qarya. The weight was really heavy. And then you think about Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, one Rasul sent from his time until the end of time for all of mankind and for all of jinn. So imagine, the burden on our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then the strength of the person of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the wisdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be able to explain his revelation in a way that would not just suffice his people in his tongue, but all the way until the end of time. And this is one of the significant things about understanding how, when you see how Allah sent different prophets and messengers, they were sent to their own people. They were sent for the tongue, the native tongue of their people. They had a limited scope, mostly. They had a limited scope that they were responsible for. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his scope is extremely vast, which is why his miracle is the Quran, and even his Sunnah alayhi salatu wasalam is a miracle in and of itself. So what you have of law, Islamic law, is a miracle in and of itself, because it's meant for the time that it was revealed in the middle of a desert to people that were, sheep herders, camel herders, this kind of, until the end of time, where you're using the same ayat, same ahadith to address complex topics as, Islamic finance and all this kind of stuff, and medicine and how these things, that there's all these mu'tamarat, there's these conferences that happen every year where we address these difficult topics and how do you deal with them and all the social issues that are happening at this time. The body of knowledge that you're dealing with is the same. The source is the same. And it's still being used to answer questions for today. Over 1400 years ago, but you're still using that same body of knowledge. So there's an appreciation, right? We're not using the Torah, we're not using the Injil, we're not using what was sent to Nuh alayhi salam, but we're using what was sent to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is something very unique, very, very powerful, very, very impressive if you really think about what's happening. That from his time until the end of time, this will be the source of knowledge for all people. So just so we get a sense of appreciation, that when Allah Azza wa Jalla sent all these multiple 124,315 Rusul, but there's one, and that is our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? One, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is going to be until the end of time. And so the body of knowledge that we study, it's not just as simple as, I need to know how to pray or make wudu or do this and that. But you are experiencing one of the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He revealed something that you are continuing to use, and it will be continued to be used and relied upon for the guidance of all mankind until the end of time. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to give us this appreciation for, new appreciation for what we have, inshaAllah ta'ala. Sometimes fiqh can get, people sit around the dinner table, they fight over it all the time. They hear different opinions, from their families or their imams or whatever it is, and they like to sit about it and fight all the time. Today is a special day. What's today? Who's asking for candy? Mahmoud was asking, no, he was asking for it. They're pointing at each other. Who's asking for candy? It's every year the same conversation. Is this halal? Is this haram? Is it okay? Is it not okay? Every single thing comes up. So, but it's not just that, right? You have a living guide for you, and the more you understand it, the more you appreciate it, the more barakah you will get out of it as well. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din." Whoever Allah intends good for, Allah gives them understanding of the religion, and Allah has made this accessible for us all. It's up to us. Are we going to take from it or not? Are we going to understand it or not? So it's really up to you to decide whether you can fall in that category. You ask Allah Azza wa Jal to raise us among such people. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
يظل بالكان هاي عند بعض النعيم. النعيم الكان مخبيهم بالاوفيس.